Hi friends, welcome to the Plain Fun RC channel. I'm your host, Saul, and we are now working on the midsection of the right wing for the Beechcraft Starship by AMTN. And you can see here what we've done is we've gone ahead, we're using our building board because the building board does include slots to go ahead and put the ribs in place to get the proper angle. Just like we did for the canard, you want to make sure you do take the time to go ahead and angle, as you can see here, angle the slots that the spar is going into, and also the front spar and also the rear spar as well. That's important. And don't forget your leading edge. If you look at your leading edge there, you can see it's also angled as well. So that's important. So let me just show you where we are. We are here. We're working on this section right in here. And you'll notice that there's going to be a wing tube inserted here. And we have that partially inserted just to help line up the ribs. All right, friends. More to come. All right, friends, as we continue our update, you can see the right mid wing panel is done. The only thing that we need to do is just to go ahead and round off the leading edge, which we will do in just a little bit. Let's talk about what we're doing right here. You can see we've gone through and we have taken the right mid wing panel and attached it to the right inboard wing panel. And the reason for that is because we're doing two key things. One, we're checking placement, making sure that checking fit, making sure everything is fitting correctly, and we're checking the to make sure we have proper placement for the anti-rotation dowels here, and also we're going to be working on getting our wing tube, which is here, glued in place. So let's go ahead, get that taken care of, and more to come. All right, friends, you can see we have our wing tube glued in place. What we did is we used some 5-minute epoxy with some fiberglass shavings mixed in, because not only are you gluing it in the holes where the fiberglass tube passes through, but you're also going through and gluing it along the spar right in here, as you can see. So don't be chintzy on the epoxy. Get a lot in there, because as we know, there's a lot of force being generated on a fiberglass tube. Now, once we have done a few other steps, we're actually going to flip this section of the wing over, and we're going to put more epoxy on the bottom because I really want this in good and tight. Now, this is very important. When you read the instructions, let me get a quick shot of the instructions just to give you an idea. And when you read it, it reads as though they want you to attach this this fiberglass tube to both wing halves without first cutting the fiberglass tube. Because remember, this tube is all one piece. You don't want to glue it to this half just yet. You want to first glue it to this half, and then what we're going to do is we're going to slide this half of the wing off. We're going to slide our aluminum tube out of the actual fiberglass tube. And by the way, the reason why we have the aluminum tube inside the fiberglass tube when we glued this is because we want it to stay straight and true. So that way it makes putting the wing halves together easier. But you're going to want to go ahead, slide this half off. You're then going to go ahead and remove the aluminum tubing, and then you're going to cut the fiberglass tubing right at here at the separation point. And let me show you what I mean on the actual diagram that they provide. So when you look at the diagram here, you can see part number WA18 and WA19. That is a little screw set that holds the wing halves together, because the wings, as you can see here, they actually separate this way. So all you're left with is just the inboard. The middle section and the outboard section, these two are glued together. But this section here, the midsection and the inboard, are not glued together. They're just held in place with a couple screws. So therefore, that's why it's important you don't glue the wing tube to both halves, because if you do that, you're going to have a permanent wing, and you're not going to be able to separate it. Now, if you've got a big van or something like that to carry this thing, great. But I don't. So anyway, we're going to go through. We're going to remove our clamps, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do next. All right, friends, you can see how we've separated our middle right wing section from the inboard section. We have removed our aluminum wing tube, and now what we're going to do next is we're going to cut our fiberglass tube so it sits nice and flush with the right portion of the inboard wing. We're then going to take this section of the fiberglass tube, put it back into the holes you see here in the right mid-wing. Then we're going to insert our aluminum tube back into our fiberglass tube, slide the wing halves back together, and then we will glue the fiberglass wing tube to the midsection here. The reason for that is because we want to make sure, once again, with the aluminum tube in place, that we have a perfect alignment of the fiberglass tube, because once we go to slide the wing halves together, as anyone knows who's ever had an airplane that has an aluminum tube, wing tube, you need to make sure that tube is nice and straight, because if not, it can be a bit of a bear with some aircraft to get the wing halves together. So let's cut our fiberglass tube, and more to come. All right, friends, we've gone ahead, we've glued this half of the fiberglass tube to the middle wing section, and then after we let that dry, we went ahead and we separated the wing halves. We applied epoxy to the portion of the fiberglass tube sitting on the inboard wing rib on each half. And we did that because when we put the epoxy on there, we didn't want to go ahead and have any of it pushed through the tiny gap that exists between the hole in the rib and the actual fiberglass tube, because we didn't want to glue the halves together. We're going to let that sit. We're going to take the wing halves then and flip it over, put epoxy on the bottom half along the spar, just like we did here, and on the bottom half of this rib, and then we're done gluing in that portion of this particular wing tube. More to come. All right, friends, as you can see, our wing is upside down, and we've gone ahead and we have filled in this area between the fiberglass tube and the spar with epoxy. We've also gone ahead and added additional epoxy where the fiberglass tube inserts through the hole in each of the ribs, and we did that here as well on the middle wing section. So that part of the build is done. We're going to go ahead now and shift our focus over to what is the beginning of the left middle wing panel you see here, and more to come.